Is this the beginning of the end of our financial system? I will be asking my special guest today. He is a fan favorite. Max Keiser is back, host of the Keiser Report. Max, thank you so much for joining us from quarantine.
I'm loving quarantine. I mean, this is probably the greatest time of my life. I'm
Right? You
just
have
cooking.
flamingos. You're raising flamingos.
Yeah, it's great. I'm doing cooking, baking, and yoga. I got my yoga pants on right now.
You
I'm
look
just doing, yeah, feeling
you look
great, man. This is
relaxed. You
great.
looked great.
Yeah,
I was
I
getting
can't
worried
believe it.
because I hadn't heard from you. You know, you took a pause from social media. Why did you get off Twitter for a bit there?
No, no, that's not it. I'm at Real Max Kaiser on Twitter. In September of 2019, my Max Kaiser Twitter account stopped working. So I took that as a sign from Satoshi to start a new Twitter account at Real Max Kaiser and to recommit myself to Satoshi, the vision of Satoshi, the mission of Bitcoin. And I think it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe someday that Max Kaiser Twitter account will start working again. I have no idea. There's nothing that the system has told me is wrong. It just stopped work. It just froze up. I think there's a database issue. I think it's a bug. There's
You know
contention
what?
maybe in the
You had
database.
too
I don't
many
know.
followers. You broke the internet, Max.
I don't know what the problem is. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's like I recommitted myself at Real Max Kaiser. I had like a rebirth. I channel Satoshi. I am Satoshi's representative here on Earth. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I did. I know you are still spreading the gospel of Bitcoin, even from quarantine. You're still spreading the word. But I guess my main question to you, Max, is it, how do you make the case for Bitcoin in this society right now where people just want cash, 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 cash?
Oh, well, Daniela, this is an interesting question. So let's look at the big picture here. So we have a few different things going on. You've got the stock market, you've got the gold market, you've got the cash market, you've got Bitcoin, and how are these things all interacting with each other? So let's talk about gold for a second, because as you know, I've been a big buyer of gold since 2003, a big buyer of silver also since 2003, and I got into Bitcoin through gold and through silver because I recognized it in 2011 that it was a gold substitute, that it is hard money. And right now in the gold market, because of the failure of the LBMA and the COMEX to be able to deliver, they're having a massive run on those exchanges, like we saw in the gold pool days of the 1960s. There's gold is hard to come by. Russia announced that they stop buying gold. But you know why? Because they can't get gold.
You think that's the reason? Is that the reason you think?
They can't get it. You can't get gold. Gold is not available at these prices. And the LBMA and the COMEX are in the process of failing. And the beneficiary of this will be Bitcoin, because a sovereign like Russia or China or an institution or a high net worth individual, once they get fed up and they can't source any gold in size, they're going to go for the only other hard money available to them, and that would be Bitcoin.
It is an interesting scenario in gold right now. We have mine shutdowns. We have mint shutdowns. People email me, I can't get silver. I can't get gold coins. And then you brought up the other issue that I want to talk to you about is we have this discrepancy, and I want to get your take on it. I look at gold future prices, and then I look at spot gold on various bullion sites, and the prices there's such a discrepancy. There's such a spread now between futures and spot. What's going on, Max?
Well, what's going on is that the LBMA and the COMEX have been engaged in fraudulent behavior for many years by lending out gold for sale to keep the price down. The gold's been kept down in price. As much manipulation as there is in the other aspects of the market, let's say in the US dollar market, as much manipulation as goes on in global markets, and as much of the shenanigans we see in the central banks and 0% interest rates. And Neil Kashkari recently went on 60 Minutes and said that the Fed has a, quote, infinite amount of money. So in order to keep an infinite amount of money bid, in order to keep it viable, you have to suppress the price of gold. We've been saying that, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, GATA, put out a report back in the early 2000s. And that was the first report that Stacy found that she thought, this is really fascinating stuff. We should do a film about this. And this was our first film we made ever for Al Jazeera English back in 2003, I believe, about GATA and the suppression of gold. And that story has been developing for years. We were the ones who told Germany to repatriate their gold. We made a movie in Germany and exposed in the Bundesbank when the crash of 2008 happened. We asked them, where's the gold? Right in the Bundesbank. We were eyewitnesses, and they said, "Oh, it's in New York."
I didn't know you were behind. I didn't know that you were part of that.
Yep, the German public had never had an actual Bundesbank official admit publicly that the gold was in New York. They had talked about it theoretically, but they never had admission from a Bundesbank official. Within a year, Germany went ahead and they started to repatriate their gold, and then other countries started to repatriate their gold. A lot of countries are repatriating their gold, and of course, the gold supply, according to the LBMA and COMEX, is a lot less than the paper market. The paper market is a scam. There are, for every ounce of gold, there's probably, I don't know, a lot. Let's say many, many, many more ounces of paper gold. And if when you have a run on these exchanges like you have now at the LBMA or the COMEX, it's just like any run. It causes chaos, and the price is immaterial because there's just none available. You can't get it. Russia got so fed up, they said, forget it. We're not even going to try to buy any gold anymore because there's none available at any reasonable price. Forget it. We're not even going to try. And that's the problem with gold. Now, the next alternative, hard money, would be, aside from silver, of course, is great, but aside from that would be Bitcoin. And that's why you see some great interest in Bitcoin right now. The price is up this year. It's one of the very few markets in the world that's up in 2020. And what's funny is that for years, people said, oh, Bitcoin's so volatile. How could it ever be a store of value? Well, this year, Bitcoin is the least volatile asset class of any asset class there is. It's less volatile than stocks. It's certainly less volatile than oil. It's less volatile than many, many currencies out there. It's less volatile. So Bitcoin's coming into its own in 2020, and it is a store of value. It is gold 2.0, and it will achieve a market capitalization similar to gold in the many trillions of dollars. So you're talking about a $400,000 price is my target ultimately for Bitcoin, and it looks great.
How are you preparing for the halving? I picture you're going to throw like a mega party, of course, just in your house alone. But how are you preparing? Are you accumulating more ahead of the halving happening in May?
I have a full position in Bitcoin, as I have a full position in gold, and I have a full position in silver.
So you're all stocked up.
I have. My positions were built long ago at much cheaper prices. So the halving is a key element of the Bitcoin protocol, but it's only one of the incentives that make up the protocol. The stack, the protocol, the Bitcoin's protocol has many layers, and the halving is one element to it. But there are many other pieces to the Bitcoin protocol that make it beautiful in terms of the incentives, the way they're beautifully balanced. I call it the Sistine Chapel of money. There's never been money invented like Bitcoin that's so gorgeous, so beautiful. If you just study the design of it, you just study the white paper, it's like looking at a fine Da Vinci artwork or an incredible Swiss watch. It's awe-inspiring. The technology is awe-inspiring, Danielle. I suggest you take a few days off and maybe drop some acid and read the white paper over and over again until you finally understand it. Because clearly you're close to understanding it, but you haven't been transformed yet. You haven't crossed the Bitcoin horizon.
The acid thing might not help.
Well, I suggest you name your baby either Satoshi if it's a boy or Satoshina if it's a girl.
We were thinking COVID, but anyhow.
That's timely.
I had a former missionary of Bitcoin on last week, John McAfee, who I'm sure you know well, who was a huge proponent of Bitcoin and then broke up with Bitcoin. And I asked him, why? And he said, well, I like the altcoins and I just feel they're more secure and it's just far more technologically superior than Bitcoin. What would your response be?
Well, John came very late to Bitcoin. He came in, the price had already was in the thousands. He was very late, and he tried to make up for lost time by pushing altcoins, or what many people would rightfully call shitcoins. He's a bit of a circus clown who tries to push garbage onto people, and he's been committing. I mean, I worked on Wall Street for many years. When John McAfee did his Coin of the Day Club a few years ago, that's called security manipulation. That's called securities fraud. That's why the SEC was after him, as they were, and rightfully so. So he's not a credible guy. There's a few people that are not at all credible in this space. John McAfee is not to be given any credibility whatsoever. He's a complete jackass. Roger Ver started off good, but he's now a charlatan. Craig Wright is a lunatic. But for some reason, the press focuses on these guys. I think it's the same reason they like to cover, car accidents. They zoom in on the bloody bodies and they say, look at this bloody body on the street. How interesting. So for some reason, they give airtime to Roger and Craig and John McAfee, even though that they're certifiably insane delinquents who don't deserve any airtime. But Satoshi doesn't care. Satoshi will eventually marginalize these people. In 5 years' time, you will never hear those names ever again. They'll be completely lost to the Bitcoin history books.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part for people who want to enter the cryptocurrencies, even though whether you want to argue whether it's too late or not, but just figuring out, well, who can I listen to, who's not being paid behind some cryptocurrency to push a certain crypto?
Well, it's obvious that Bitcoin doesn't have a paid pushers out there because it's anonymous, it's pseudonymous, it's got no marketing team, it's got nothing to suggest that it's anything like any of these other coins that are being pushed by. Let's take a look at Bitcoin Satoshi Vision is 90% of the volume is wash sales. There's no price discovery at all. It's complete wash sales. It's complete garbage. Same thing with Bitcoin Cash, Roger Ver's coin. They're not even an active market. Bitcoin has 85, maybe 90% of all hash rate of all coins in total. Forget the fact that it's got 65% of the market cap. It's got like 85% of the hash power. And it's same thing in any market, Daniela, as you well know. People who know on one hand that they should be buying something like an Amazon because it's an obviously well set market leader, somehow get talked into buying the next Amazon, which is some crazy penny stock from nowhere run by a couple of guys in a lab wearing white coats that has no coverage on Wall Street, but somehow they're the next Bitcoin. Look, even Ethereum and Vitalik Buterin is a scam. Ethereum's a scam coin. That's junk. It's absolute garbage. Nothing has ever come from it, and it's total. But Vitalik was good at marketing himself as, quote, the next Bitcoin, or he's not a, quote, Bitcoin maximalist, and they just all this. I met Vitalik in London when he was still working at Bitcoin Magazine, and he was just thinking about Ethereum. And I could tell when I met him, and he was, I think, still a teenager at that point, that he was looking for a way to kind of try to cash in by fooling the public into thinking that there could be another Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So, look, people are very easily redirected from the truth that is solid. Look how long it's taken people to come around to gold. It's had thousands of years of history, and yet people are like, no, I don't want gold. I'm going to get something else like Tide detergent pods.
It's interesting. I almost would you say that gold has almost become mainstream now, or not yet? Because I have people that I went to kindergarten with calling me now saying, how do I get gold? Is it there yet?
Yeah, I think so, because we have public perception now has gotten to the point because of all the work over the years. So the Keiser report has been talking about all these problems for years. Guys like you have on your show, like Jim Rickards, for example, who's written many books, and these books are very, very fine books. Jim Rickards is an excellent author. And his books go into great detail, and they become New York Times bestsellers. And he talks about the fact that these markets are scam coins. They're scam because fiat money itself is a scam. And Jim wrote a great book about gold. But people are beginning to come around to the fact that when they see that every single problem is being addressed by printing more money, when they see that in the market collapse of the past 2 weeks is met with 6 trillion in money printing and this idea of infinite quantitative easing. There's a great meme right now on the internet called the money printers go burr. Money printers go burr, right? So it shows that the central bank and they show the stock market. And they show the central bank is trying to pump up the stock market by printing money. So those two things are now in people's consciousness. That's new. Nobody up until recently understood that the stock market is the product of money printing solely, that the companies are not earning more, the companies are not more productive, the companies are not better managed, they're simply buying back their own stock with printed money. And as a result, you have this enormous Ponzi scheme. And so the people understand that, and now instinctively they say, well, if I want to get out of the Ponzi scheme, where do I go? And there's gold, silver, Bitcoin. Those are your 3 life rafts.
So on that note, because of all your experience on Wall Street, and I want to get your take on the economy now and where we're headed, what would you advise people who are saying, but a lot of these equities now just seem like a deal? Like, shouldn't I be getting into aviation stocks, or maybe I should be picking up some Apple stock right now? What do you say?
Well, it's interesting. I look for some signals in the market to give me some direction which way things are going. And when I see the Saudi sovereign wealth fund buying a huge stake in Carnival Cruise Lines, that I think is significant, because it tells me that although these markets are crashing, there's still pockets of many, many trillions of dollars held in these sovereign wealth funds. We know from the investigative journalism done a few years ago that there are approximately $22 trillion held offshore in pockets of offshore money. That's not part of the real, it's part of the offshore economy. And so that's looking for a place to invest. If the Saudi government, for example, thinks that they want to diversify out of oil, which we know that they do, and that suddenly these franchises like the cruise line industry or an airline stock is trading at 80% down, why wouldn't they be buying 10 or 15 or 20% of these companies? So I think there's a certain floor, unlike in the 30s. People make the comparison to the 1930s, but in the 1930s, you didn't have this amount of cash floating around the system. You didn't have the markets developed where a Saudi Arabia could come in with a $500 billion bet overnight to make a move. You didn't have 0% interest rates. You were still on a gold standard, which was limiting to what you could do. And so there is enormous latitude amongst extremely wealthy pockets of capital to do lots of stuff. As far as the individual investor goes, I learned in 1987, during the crash of 87, that the best thing to do is just stay the course, and that over time, stock market does, reasonably well. I think the mom and pops out there who are down should be adding to positions. I don't think it makes sense to drop out on a shock move down. The economy is not driven by fundamentals. The economy is driven by money printing. And if you look at the amount of debt that the U.S. has as a percentage of GDP, they're saying, oh, well, it's going to get to 93% of GDP. Well, it's trying to catch up to Japan, and Japan has a debt to GDP closer to 300%. So the America can print 50, 60 trillion more and buy up 50 to 60 trillion more in assets on the central bank balance sheet. The central bank balance sheet could go to 200 or 300% of GDP, as you see in Japan. The central bank has a balance sheet greater than the GDP of Japan. The U.S. could have a balance sheet greater than the GDP of America. So that balance sheet on the Fed, they say, oh my God, it's at 5 trillion. That's unsustainable. The fact is, it could go to 20 trillion or 25 trillion.
Right.
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 Go ahead.
I mean, could you have ever imagined a complete shutdown of the economic system, not even just in the US, but globally here?
No, I couldn't, because I've never had any experience like that. The pandemic of 1918 was not in my memory, and it's completely new. It's a brand new thing. It's and the
How long?
response.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how long do you think this road is? How long do you think businesses will remain closed in the U.S. here?
I think there's going to be a transformation, and certain businesses are going to be completely transformed forever going forward. Certain businesses are going to rise to the top. Obviously, companies like Zoom, which is a new company, but it's become the go-to platform for social media, for video conferencing. They have a bright future. Social media stocks are doing well. Amazon, I was just looking at Amazon. The revenue for Amazon obviously is going up quite sharply. Their costs are also going up because they've got to add some more costs in terms of social distancing and labor costs. Labor costs, I tell you, one of the fallouts from this should be and could be is that labor costs start to go up in a meaningful way. Ever since Reagan fired the air traffic controllers back in the 80s, labor's been shrinking. Organized labor in America has been shrinking, and wages have not really grown at all over 40, 45 years when you compare it to, let's say, the growth of money supply. But what now we're seeing with the blue collar or gig economy or minimum wage economy workers, I think they're in an excellent position now to start to organize. I think organized labor is going to come back in a big way, which is fine by me. I think it's been out of the picture for too long. Well, it doesn't make me a socialist. It just makes me kind of an observer of long-term economic trends.
Because, once we do get out of this, and we will get out of this, if you had to choose one lasting impact, is it, a newfound appreciation for food supply? Is it, like you said, relying more so on social media? What do you think will be the lasting impact from this?
I think the lasting impact will be a reawakening of the American philosophy of transcendentalism, which was big during the mid-1800s by Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson and others, who talked about individual sovereignty, that talked about America's innate ability to have to not be subject to be, excuse me, self-reliant.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yes. The self-reliance of that philosophy. So America at one point, during that era was a nation that prided itself on self-reliance. And so now this pandemic and the quarantining, et cetera, has forced people to rediscover that, hey, you know what? I actually can cook my own food. I can do some gardening. I can read a book. I can write a book. I can learn how to program. I can do lots of stuff. And I think that's going to be fantastic, really, because I think we've been living under a cloud of oppressive kind of technocracy where we are left to just click on ads is our only job. I think a lot of people are depressed by that because they feel like the only thing there's for them to do is click on ads to generate this model. They have no individual self-worth. I think individual self-worth is going to find a renaissance. And the American individual self-worth is the world-beating model that gave us a man on the moon. It gave us huge, successful companies like Apple, like Amazon. That's an American story. These don't happen in other countries because the other countries I lived in Europe for many years. The European attitude is absolutely nothing like the American attitude. The European attitude is work as little as possible, take as many vacation days as possible, and just let the state provide everything. And my goal in life is to be a civil servant. I met so many people in Europe whose goal in life was to be a civil servant, a bureaucrat. The entrepreneurialism is dead in Europe for the most part.
Who do you think wins there, Max? Who's better off?
America.
Even with less vacation time.
America is government buying for the people. The power is distributed. And one story that's come out of this COVID-19 that I just saw on yesterday, Chris Martenson, who does a fantastic podcast every day at Peak Prosperity. He's been covering COVID-19 since January, and he's been spot on, telling people what it is, what to do. He just had a story yesterday about a sewing shop in America that decided on its own to test every material they could possibly lay their hand on to see if they could make homemade masks that were 95% on the 95 level. You're blocking out 95% of all the nasty particles. And they went at it with a fury, and they tested every particle. They got the equipment to test to see if it was working. They went on the GoFundMe page, and they're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're distributing these masks over. Only took a week, and they're medical grade homemade masks. And that's an American thing. That you would never see that in Europe, ever. Nobody. No. You never see that in Europe. Never see that in Asia. That is America right there.
Max Keiser, I thoroughly enjoyed our talk today. You look great. Stacy looks great. Quarantine has been great for you. You're relaxed, and I appreciate you taking the time from cooking, from yoga.
I'll send you one of my keto cheesecakes.
Oh, no, keto. I don't do keto. Sorry, Max.
Okay.
I'll
send you a full strength
there you go.
Cheesecake,
100%
non-keto.
Carbohydrates.
100%
That's what I'm fueled
dangerous, by. 100% sugar.
But I am
cheesecake.
happy you have gold, you have silver, you have Bitcoin, you have enough toilet paper, I'm assuming. You're all stocked up. You guys are good there.
Look, the only thing I really need is Stacy.
Stacy, that is so sweet.
Well, that's
Max
it. That's
it.
Max and Stacy. We've been through all over the world. We've been to revolutions. We've been to insurrections. We've been to the fire bombings and the tear gas, and nothing has stopped our love. It just grows every day.
Well,
it's unstoppable.
You know what? She is an incredible and beautiful woman inside and out. So, good on you, Max. Thanks so much. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, why not?
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. And thanks for watching this conversation with Max Keiser. We'll have more for you on Kiko.com.